When the chaos of popular culture makes your brain hurt, you really need relief in the form of a transfusion of analysis and humor. It's time for a POPeration. Join hosts Eric and Stacey as they dissect pop culture, one bloody organ at a time. It's just what the doctor ordered.
Hello, and welcome back to POPeration. I'm Eric.
I'm Stacey.
And we're here today to talk about one of our favorite things.
And hopefully we've had examples of it during the show.
We hope, because we're hilarious.
We are hilarious. That's comedy.
We're going to talk about comedy today. And specifically, we're going to harken back to how we met. Which is that Stacey and I met on the set of a play. We played twins. We were known as the Woo-mates by the rest of the cast because we took to each other right away. But one of the things that we learned as actors, and actually we met on the set of a comedy.
It's funny that, correct. It is an
not going to name the play because the playwright might be listening and it might hurt his feelings, but we didn't find it to be an incredibly funny comedy, but billed as a comedy nonetheless, and it had its amusing moments.
It thought it was a comedy.
It thought it was a comedy, and we disagreed.
But we were funny. I do want to point that out. We were funny.
Hilarious. I ate a lot, and I decided that I was a compulsive eater. Yeah. I totally stole the show from.
You totally did. You actually did. You really did.
From one, there was a very dramatic scene happening downstage, and I was upstage, and I poured myself some cornflakes. But before I put the milk on them, I doused them with chocolate syrup. And then poured the milk on and then stirred for the longest time. And right when the lead actress, who we did not enjoy, came to her big dramatic moment, I would take my first taste and the entire audience would go, ew!
Always there's
It was this
gas.
whole ew. It wasn't gas, but it was ugh, I can't believe you're eating that. Which fun. Is just, it's like,
But what that meant is they were all watching you.
They were all watching me.
Nobody was watching or listening to her, which was, that's what I would have
Because
done
audiences like comedy. Audiences, because that was gross, and so that was considered funny. And so they liked it.
Okay, so there goes to the first question.
And when I stole the show from that awful woman that we did not enjoy, you fell in love with me right away.
I thought it was a brilliant idea. As a co-actor, that's brilliant.
As
a director, it's right damn straight. As a director, the director should have put a stop to that.
But they didn't. They thought it was great. Because you know why? Because I had an idea. And they thought it was wonderful for actors to have ideas. It's their first mistake right there. Actors having ideas is bad.
The thing. So you have the cornflakes, you put on the chocolate syrup, and people are going, and then they're laughing.
Yep.
That's comedy?
That's comedy.
Okay, so what is comedy then? So then we have to define what it is.
Yeah, I think comedy in its purest form is truth taken to an absurd level of exaggeration.
Does it always make you laugh?
It either makes you laugh or it amuses you. I think that there's a whole piece around, there's a reason why there are so many romantic comedies. And romantic comedies typically have these happy endings that even if the ending doesn't make you howl with laughter, it does make you go, oh, when they finally get together. If it's been a rocky road to love. So for the very first time last night, I saw French Kiss.
I love that movie.
Had never seen it before.
I love that movie.
Very funny.
I love that movie.
Bub.
I love that movie.
Hysterical. And I have a huge, never-ending crush on Kevin Kline.
One of the best, this has nothing to do with this, fun fact, that's one of the best, in my opinion, screen kisses ever.
Yes.
The one at the very end.
At the very end?
At the very end.
Okay,
when they're in the vineyard.
I was thinking the one on the train.
Yeah, it was fine. No. As a woman, the kiss when they're in the vineyard at the very end, that was a powerful kiss.
Yep.
That was awesome.
They named the movie after it. So, there you go.
But anyway, yes, but that was a romantic comedy.
And there are a lot of romantic comedies. A lot of comedies put romance as kind of this other subgenre in what's going on because it makes you feel good. I think that the laughs are often combined with something that makes you feel good. And then there's that political kind of very topical comedy which makes you think, but makes you think in a way that the thinking goes down a little easier because you're having a good time.
So it was a really long time ago when I was, because I really thought about, when you do, so we're actors, and there are certain kinds.
Do you know who I used to be?
Is that from?
That's from Life. That's our dear friend Kathy Galloway, who's no longer with us. She came up with that. Do you know who I used to be?
Well, here's my thing though. When you're an actor and you choose, especially like you choose what plays you audition for, and so I audition for, honestly, more often than not, it's going to be a comedy. Okay. I enjoy doing comedies more. So when I realized this about myself, I wanted to figure out why, because I tend to overanalyze the hell out of everything. I wanted to know, why am I going for this? What is it about comedies? So then you go into what makes you laugh. Why does someone laugh at something and then something else not? Maybe it's this, what is it? And I feel like I heard somebody say that you laugh when something is unexpected. It's like, why do people laugh at the punchline of a joke? Well, if it's a good joke, you're not expecting the punchline to be exactly what the punchline is. And so it makes you laugh. And I think that is, it's the unexpected, and whether it's an unexpected punchline or pratfall or idea, because it can sometimes be an unexpected idea that comes out and you're like, oh. But I think the unexpected is very key to what makes us laugh, and thus what is good comedy is keeps people on the edge of their seat waiting for the next thing, but not knowing what it'll be, because if they expect it, they're not going to laugh as hard.
And I think a lot that's true for a lot of things. I think you could look at some very dramatic moments where the unexpected thing happens and it's actually very tragic and it's not. So, Mel Brooks said, tragedy is when I cut my finger. Comedy is when I fall into a sewer and die. And that was the great Mel. There's an overdone quality to comedy. It's kind of taken to an extreme length sometimes. Or the other thing is it's just very clever. Cleverness.
I found I found online, because the internet never lies.
Did you do a Google?
I did a Google.
Okay. What did
and
your Google tell you?
It never lies. So this must be true.
It must be true.
There are 9 types. Well, it's titled, I think this is funny, it's titled 9 types of humor every aspiring comic should know.
Okay.
This is not to say that there are only 9, but these are 9, but they hit pretty much everything. So there's slapstick comedy.
Yep. So Jack Tripper falling over the couch.
Correct. Huge slapstick. Deadpan.
Maggie Smith, Downton Abbey.
Nicely done. Self-deprecating. Curb Your Enthusiasm. Larry David, sorry.
Yep.
Potty humor.
Okay.
Seth Rogen. Topical humor. Wouldn't that be like The Daily Show, Jon Stewart, or stuff like that? Or what are you thinking?
Wag the dog kind of stuff.
Oh, okay,
that could be very, that's...
Satire. So like Scary Movie, things like that.
Okay.
Airplane.
Yeah, things that are making fun of other things. Or like
parody, but that's also parody.
I think that's more parody. I think the satire is the Jonathan Swift kind of thing. Where, or Charlie Chaplin, the Great Dictator. It's like, right. And Saturday Night Live is mostly satire.
Or like W, thing on George W. Okay. And then, as I said, parody, which we were talking about, Airplane would be more a parody. Black comedy. What was it, Dr. Strangelove?
Yes, very great.
That kind of thing.
Yep.
And then surreal comedy. I think of Brazil.
Birdman.
The British stuff. They tend to do that pretty well. I mean, that's basically true. I mean, that's almost everything that you think of can probably fit in one of those.
Probably.
Because you talk about romantic comedies. In a romantic comedy, you're probably going to have some slapstick.
Yep.
You're going to have some self-deprecating stuff. You'll have a lot of deadpan stuff. Yeah. Because that's always fun.
The one thing that I don't know, maybe it just crosses all of these, is that verbal humor. That stuff where just really, really funny wordplay, or just the perfect put down Just somebody who just uses words really, really well. I respond to that a lot.
I feel like that's deadpan.
Clever.
To me, that's usually deadpan. Usually,
Sometimes,
if you're saying like that, you're saying it, it's either topical or it's deadpan. But I get what you're saying, just clever wordplay kind of thing. That
and I guess farces and things like that, those kind of 5-bedroom deals, that's mostly like slapstick.
That's mostly slapstick, I think. That's my guess. If we have to stay with these 9, which we don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, farce is certainly. But again, it's, I think the idea is there is something unexpected that pushes that laugh out of you. And you start thinking in a different way.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about that moment when I think about verbal humor is when the cast of Frasier was stranded at the Snow Lodge, and there was this, of course, this man in France whose name was spelled Guy, but of course it was Guy, who had the crush on Niles and the whole big blow up. But I'm not gay, Guy. And you're laughing right now. I mean, it was just so funny, and that it was very farcical in a lot of ways. That episode, because lots of slamming doors.
Yes.
But just those
and
moments.
That's farcical. So that's farce.
Yeah.
And maybe that's number 10.
Yeah.
Is farce, because farce is certainly a different kind of acting as well. But who makes us laugh?
Oh gosh. Okay, so interestingly, the first name that popped into my head, weirdly enough, don't look at me crazy, Meryl Streep, can make me laugh really, really hard. And I think about Postcards from the Edge. And I guess I came to her because it was surprising the first time she made me laugh really, really hard. And again, that was that kind of verbal humor. When they said, we're going to have to pump your stomach, and she says, do I have to be there? And it's just, and of course that was the genius of Carrie Fisher.
Correct. I was going to say that to me is a lot to do with the writing, because I saw Meryl Streep in that Roseanne Barr movie she did.
She-Devil.
That's it. I thought it was awful. And I didn't think Meryl was good in it. And I remember walking away from that going, well, the poor dear can't do comedy.
I think it was beneath her. But then, Devil Wears Prada. Brilliant.
Correct. Yeah. And so, I mean, I have since changed my mind on whether she can do comedy or not. But so I go back to going, well, it's the writing and the directing probably weren't, part of that.
Okay, little rabbit hole though on She-Devil. I read the book. And in the book, the Roseanne Barr character gets so much plastic surgery, she resembles the woman who stole her husband. And Meryl Streep should have taken over for Roseanne Barr halfway through that movie and played that character to the end. That's what I thought that movie was.
Okay.
And so when I saw it, I was just so disappointed that didn't happen. Right. And when I saw Meryl at the beginning, I thought, well, she's just doing this so she can be brilliant in the second half. And it didn't happen. Anyway.
Right. Okay.
Who makes you laugh? Who makes you laugh?
Well, if I think about the first name that came to my mind was Carol Burnett. Because I think back growing up watching the Carol Burnett show, which, again, brilliant writing, plus good directing, plus stupid good talent.
Yeah.
Because the big thing that every comic or comedian or anybody who deals with comedy will tell you is that it's all in the timing.
Yeah.
And so the good ones have really good timing. So there is that unexpected quality, but the timing of putting that unexpected quality at the right place at the right time, that's where the artistry comes in.
Yeah.
And I feel like Carol Burnett, as much as a diva as I believe that she's become now, she was wonderful at that. Yeah. Somebody else who was good at timing, Michael J. Fox. And you look at that's what made him a breakout star of Family Ties, is his freaking timing.
Yep.
And I think that that's what impresses me, and those are the people that stand out. There are a lot of people that make me laugh. Jon Stewart makes me laugh. There are a lot of people that make me laugh. But Tina Fey, hysterical. Love her. And she has great timing as well. Alec Baldwin has amazing timing. There are a lot of people who make me laugh, but if I have to pick one that just stands out as classic, it's Carol Burnett, and it is Carol Burnett over Lucille Ball, but that's another story.
Yeah. Debate for another day.
Yes. But anyway, that's who it would be.
So it's interesting, this topic of timing, because the two of us always did comedy on stage. And timing is really important. It's like when to land that joke, when to trip over the couch, when to eat that chocolate-encrusted cornflake.
Correct.
All of those things kind of come into play. And with a live audience, sometimes you can just kind of sense it, when that moment is.
Correct.
And I've always said comic timing is one of those things. If you can teach it, I don't know how you would. But it's something you just have.
I agree.
And funny people on stage tend to be pretty funny off stage because they have that sense of how to...
Well, again, it's when do you say what it is that you say.
Yep.
It may not be funny if you say it too early or too late. But you can get but knowing when to get the biggest bang for your buck. That again, I use the word artistry. That's where that comes in.
But I wonder if in film acting, it's just really hard. Not having
I don't know. I mean, I haven't either. I think
editors might help you out a little bit there.
Exactly, that your director and your editor have more of a play in it as opposed to just the person themselves, which is why Meryl Streep could suck so bad, in my opinion, in She-Devil, and yet knock it out of the park in Prada.
Yeah.
Or even that Mrs. Henderson thing that she did. So anyway, but again, we're talking about this, and we're talking about comedy, and maybe we should talk about the difference between comedy and drama when we get back.
When we get back.
Wondering what room you've stumbled into? Don't mind the scalpels. You're in the POPeration room with Eric and Stacey.
Okay, so we're back, and we're talking about comedy
on POPeration.
Yeah, we are on POPeration. And so now, comedy versus drama. Why are we talking about comedy? Well, one reason we're talking about comedy is because Eric and I are really good at it. She said
hilarious.
She said it so humbly. I'm the most humble person I know. But no, because we have the most experience in it, I think, and we've done it quite a bit. A lot of it we have done a lot together as well. Mm-hmm. And I talked earlier about how we choose what plays we audition for, and I tend to go toward auditioning for comedies. One reason is because that's what I enjoy watching more, to be frank with you. Yeah. I like things that, yes, you're going to take me out of myself and my life. I want to enjoy it. I want to walk away with a smile on my face.
I find that when I look at what I want to audition for, I'm a little bit, the perfect roles for me and the perfect experiences are that lovely mix of both. Mm-hmm. So when we were thinking about who makes us laugh, and Meryl was the first name I came up with. Another name I could have easily spat out would be Margaret Cho. And her best work, as far as I'm concerned, is the very first time she kind of did this extended one-woman play as much as it was stand-up, and it's called I'm the One That I Want.
Right.
And she details what it was like to have an eating disorder on the set of her very first. She was the first Asian American woman to star in a sitcom and be the star of that. She suffered from, I believe, bulimia. While she was doing that, and she talked about race and gender and Hollywood and trying to make it in her own kind of. And there was, there was this moment in the show where somebody, a reporter, asks her a question, and it's just really devastating. They said, what was it like for you to have to lose weight to play the part of yourself on your own television show? And the audience did exactly what you're doing. But then the publicist for the show took the microphone away from her and said, there is no truth to that whatsoever. And the audience just kind of stopped. And then she looks at the audience almost with tears in her eyes and says, I was so hungry. And everyone just falls apart. Because it was just kind of one of those things. I was starving, and everyone just kind of reacted that not what you expected.
Correct.
Perfect comic timing in that moment.
And real.
But brought you to the point of tears and then back. And the other moment that I think of is in Steel Magnolias when, Sally Field has that breakdown at the end of the movie. Won't spoil it for anybody, but Sally Field's very upset at the end of Steel Magnolias.
Okay.
And Olympia Dukakis does the funniest thing in the world and makes everyone laugh harder than they would have had they not just been on the brink of tears. And so what I love to do are those comedy drama mix-ups. And when I was writing a lot, I used to write for the theater quite a bit, not so much anymore, I would always think that I was writing a drama. I would always think that I was writing something that was about real people and real situations, and I would call it a drama. And when I was lucky enough to get my work produced, the reviews would come out. It would be a new comedy by Eric Peterson. And I would think, what? And you would go see the play, and every 60 seconds the audience would laugh. And of course, they all walked out thinking that it was a comedy. And what I thought later, what I kind of came to, is that I write real plays about real and funny people who deal with adversity by cracking a few jokes, and they're just naturally funny. And when you got funny people in those roles, it worked really well. That's what I really respond to as an audience member, and that's really what I like to play.
I do think if you have a drama that you need to have there needs to be some level of some comedy in there to break up the drama. Otherwise, it's a funeral. And so
there are a lot of those.
I think that I think
you think about the Glass Menagerie, not a whole lot of laughs in that show.
That's true. And it's a classic, but it's not necessarily anything I want to watch every day. I mean,
Streetcar Named Desire. That's a laugh riot right there.
No, but it has its moments. There are moments, but so then you say, well, which one's
Sophie's
harder?
Choice, the musical.
Okay. Sophie's Choice is a good one. Although there, Kevin Kline's character, I mean, again, even I think a good drama, because even in, I don't know, Tess of the D'Urbervilles probably didn't have any comedy. But I think in a good drama, in my opinion, there should be some, to make it realistic, there should be moments of a little bit of levity, maybe not hysterical amounts, but some kind of break up from all of that drama. Having said that, here's my question to you. Which is harder, comedy or drama? Oh,
comedy. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, hands down. And the reason to me, is that you really do have to hold an audience in the palm of your hand and handle them very delicately.
But a good drama will make people cry. So is it easier to make somebody laugh than cry? That's my question to you.
Well, so much depends on the writing. If you're trying to make people laugh in a bad comedy versus trying to make them cry in a really well-crafted drama, it's easier to do the drama. If it's the other way around, if the drama is just really bad and nobody's ever going to cry at it, and you're doing, Noel Coward, it's easier to make people laugh. So writing is very key. But if let's just say for the sake of argument that you're working with two really kind of good pieces, the actor who can make people laugh and consistently, there's so much more skill involved. And timing is really the issue. Like, you can do a dramatic scene a number of different ways. If you're going to make that joke land, you've got to have this almost
and here's my answer to that question. Yeah, you're actually being probably more realistic than I am. Here's my answer to it. Is extremely simplistic. I think it's way easier to make somebody cry. All I gotta do is make you think you're a dead puppy when you were 4. Bam, done. Drop the mic. Okay.
And yet you're not making me cry.
I'm not making you cry. It's like, wow. But seriously, there are certain things that are across the board, that are commonality with everybody, that can make them cry. Making them laugh is a little more difficult, I think, because people think that different things are funny.
Yeah.
So that's why I say, I agree with you that comedy, but I'm like across the board, I say comedy is harder. Because I think that even if in a drama, even if the writing isn't just like perfect, if you have a good actor, a good dramatic actor, they can initiate the response that the author wanted, whether the writing is good enough or not.
Yep.
Whereas in a comedy, you have to work harder to initiate that laughter, because laughter is harder to grab out of people, I think, because people are like, that's why comics have to deal with hecklers. Very few dramas have to deal with hecklers. Well,
stand-up comics have to deal with hecklers.
Right. But I'm just saying in general, because
can you imagine stand-up dramatists? Can you imagine somebody who's stand-up? Well, but these are but it exists. I mean, these are those one-person shows.
Yes.
I mean,
but they're not. But it's But I see what you're saying.
These, play-length monologues that are meant to be very,
right, but they usually have some humor in them. But they are drama.
Sure.
Yeah. But I think that drama is to get the response you want from an audience. It's easier than it is because I think expectations are also higher.
Yeah.
And so
people hold on to their laughter. I think they people want to have a good time. People who go to movies that will make you cry apparently want to cry. I mean, sometimes I enjoy a good cry at a movie, so people generally want to do what they've signed up for. But when I think about one of the funniest things I've ever seen, again, maybe we're going to have a conversation about guilty pleasures. Maybe this should have been on my list. Soap Dish. I think it's just one of the most hysterical things I've ever seen.
There's a lot of funny things about it. You're talking about farce. That's a farce comedy.
Yeah. And it's just, and it kind of strikes me that typically in a drama, when you're trying to make people cry, you're crying yourself. Typically in a comedy, a lot of the things that make me laugh are when people are angry. When people go on angry rants, but in a funny way make me.
I think what the thing about that is that you have to, and this, I remember a director, and I can't even tell you who it was so long ago. The idea is that if you do that, if you, for example, cry on stage, the audience doesn't have to. If you laugh on stage, the audience doesn't have to. You kill your own joke if you laugh at it or you don't take it seriously. Now, in a comedy, if the more you're taking it seriously, in an absurd situation, the funnier it is.
Yes.
Because the audience is seeing, in theory, they can see the big picture, whereas the character is only in their own little bubble.
Yeah.
And so the more serious that character is taking it, the more absurd it becomes, and the audience is able to see the big picture, and it gets even funnier. Yeah. So I think that but again, I think timing is much more important in comedy, as you said, than it is in drama.
And it's something you cannot teach, or if you can.
And I think it's less forgiving. I think drama is more forgiving.
Yes.
If you don't hit this snare, you get a few more minutes that you can still work that moment into it. In comedy, if you've missed the moment, it's gone.
But here's the thing: comedy is. We both agree that comedy is harder. If you had to separate the two into its purest form, and yet comedy doesn't get enough respect.
I was gonna say, where are the awards for comedies? And for comic performances. Yeah. It's all. I mean, Brie Larson won the Academy Award for Room. And it was amazing. And she's freaking amazing.
Yeah.
I saw her in the Amy Schumer movie, Trainwreck.
Okay.
She was amazing in that. She wasn't the funny one in that, but she was the sister, but she was so real. That's who Brie Larson is. She's this wonderful, wonderful actor. Great. She got nominated for Room.
Yep.
And won, and that's great. It was drama.
Yeah. Oh, very much so.
Trainwreck, I'll be honest with you, she should have been nominated as Best Supporting Actress for that. She was that good. It was a small part, but she was amazing in this comedy. Trainwreck didn't get any nominations.
No. And it probably never even occurred to anybody.
But she was. I walked away from that movie going, "Who the hell is the sister? Who plays Amy's sister?" Because she was amazing. That's what I walked away from that movie from. But it's ignored.
So I recently was in New York and had the pleasure of seeing Kevin Kline, our favorite.
Yep.
Such a crush on him.
He can do everything.
He can do everything.
He can do everything.
In Noel Coward's Present Laughter, and he was playing. Get this, a famous actor. Who's also kind of a playboy. And I don't think Kevin Kline's a playboy in real life, but he's played enough of them. It didn't really seem like a stretch.
That's one of the Hollywood marriages that has lasted like for frickin' ever.
Yeah.
Him and Phoebe Cates.
Yeah. And well, she stopped working. I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
That probably had a lot to do with it, but anyway.
But who cares? We love him. He was brilliant in this play. And I sat there looking at the audience and thinking, being quite full of myself, I'll admit. But as someone who has been on stage as well, not at that level, I've never been on Broadway or even close. But I just thought, I don't know how many people in this theater have an appreciation for how hard it is to do what he is doing, because it's so effortless.
Correct.
He was just effortlessly charming and hilarious, and these jokes, it's very British, so it's very deadpan, it's very verbal. And it just has to be delivered just so for an audience to just, and a lot of chuckling. I mean, it's Noel Coward, so it wasn't like hysterical screaming laughter.
I have a comparison that has nothing, that I have a comparison to that for you when we come back.
Okay.
That will kind of explain what you're talking about between a brilliant comedic actor and maybe mediocre one or not good one.
Okay.
Is talking about the difficulty and all of that. But it's fun. You'll get it when we come
teaser.
back. A little teaser.
I'm intrigued.
That's what you're supposed to be.
When we come back.
Open wide. It's your prescribed dose of POPeration with Eric and Stacey.
And we're back. It's POPeration.
Yes, so you were talking about, you saw Kevin Kline and that...
Present Laughter on Broadway. If it's still out, go see it. See it. So good.
And he's brilliant because, and part of it is you looked around and you thought, does this audience realize how hard he's working? And the answer is no, because he makes it so effortless. Here's my comparison to that. Dancing, it's a dancing comparison. It's a comparison between Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly.
Okay.
And I've said this all my life. I like Fred Astaire better. And it's kind of against the grain. A lot of people will say, but Gene Kelly was the better choreographer, and he was also a director, and he was he could do a lot more stuff. He was more athletic, all of this. All of that is true to a certain respect. But here's what I just I dare you, dare is not right, but I challenge you to watch the two of them, even if they're in the same movie. I think they were in one together anyway, but watch them and watch them dance. Fred Astaire looks like, if you go into Holiday Inn where he is supposed to be drunk while he's doing this amazing dance, it's effortless. He doesn't look like he's working up a sweat.
No.
But when you watch Gene, he is clearly, he's concentrating, he's working hard, everything is really well rehearsed. That doesn't mean it's not pretty to look at. It doesn't mean he's not an artist. It doesn't mean he's not great. But there is an effortless quality about Fred Astaire that Gene Kelly didn't have. He didn't want to have. I don't think that was important to him. He wanted to get it right and make it look good and all of that. But I think that's one reason I enjoy Fred Astaire more, because he was so effortless. And I think that's one reason that, Kevin Kline and some of these comedians make it look so effortless.
Yeah.
And that was my comparison, is that the more effort, the more easier it looks, which I think is why it doesn't get that respect.
Yeah.
It looks easy.
And it looks fun.
It's fun and easy. Yeah. So what's hard?
Yeah.
Why, you don't get in it,
We'll see. We'll see if Kevin Kline gets a Tony next year. I'd love for him to.
I do think the Tonys are different than like movies and TV.
Yeah. Because musicals have their own category and a lot of them are funny. So, there's more to look at there. But, but I don't know that he will. I'd love for him to. But if he doesn't, it's because he's having so much fun up there that you're right. You don't see him working very hard. There are only
6 movies in the history of the Academy Awards that have won Best Picture that were categorized as comedies completely.
Okay.
6. And the last one was in 1977.
1977. I'm guessing that was Annie Hall.
Good call. That's the last one that won. The last pure comedy that was considered pure comedy that won an Oscar. The first one was It Happened in One Night in 1934.
Oh, great movie.
That is a fabulous movie with my fave Clark Gable in it. It was actually his only Oscar as well, interestingly enough. You Can't Take It With You in 1938.
Very funny.
Going My Way in 1944.
Okay.
Then that one, whatever. And then
Bing
that's
Crosby
almost
played the priest, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And then
was
almost
it funny?
20 years. It was a musical comedy.
It was heartwarming, but I don't know that it was.
Yeah, it wasn't. That one's a weird one, but that's what it was considered that.
All right.
So it won, and then Tom Jones,
very funny,
which is 1963, and then The Sting in 1973, which was also very funny.
Very funny, great movie.
And then Annie Hall. That's it for Best Picture for pure comedies. Now there are a few that were on the cusp of, are they comedy, are they not comedy? But here's my problem. Why does comedy not get the respect that drama does?
I think that there's probably something there about the fact that dramas are considered to be more important. They have something to say about the human condition that comedies are perceived not to talk about as much, which again, I disagree with. I think a lot of things that are expressed in comedy are very true. In fact, comedy's not funny if it's not true. If it's not saying, but the idea that it doesn't have as much important things to say.
Okay, that's my problem with it.
Yeah.
That's my problem, is that I feel like that is what is the general rule, is that you aren't going to be taken seriously if you do a comedy. Okay, now granted, one of those cuspy things would be Birdman. Mm-hmm. And I think it was, so that one, but that's a strange.
It's kooky, it's weird. Comedy.
It's not a straight on comedy. So it's like there has to be a strong element of drama in order for you to get that. Even if you're, quote, considered a comedy, you've got to have a very strong, you can't be pure comedy anymore and win all the awards. You've got to have some strong drama. And I just think that there's, for some reason, people are, I don't.
You're frustrated.
I don't understand. I'm very frustrated with it because I think that, as I said, and I'm harping on Brie Larson and Trainwreck because that's just the best example I have right now. Because, granted, I don't think Tina Fey and Amy Poehler's sisters should have been nominated, but it was pure fun. That was a fun movie. I did not expect it to be as fun. But talk about slapstick and farce, but there was realness about it. But Brie Larson's take on this sister part in Trainwreck was so real talk about real.
Yeah.
And it was charming, and she had funny lines in it, but she was I totally bought that she was her sister. There was nothing, it was she was perfect in it. And I walked away literally amazed by it and thinking about it. And clearly, even now, I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
But she wasn't nominated because Trainwreck, you're not going to nominate anything from Trainwreck. A, it's Amy Schumer, and she doesn't have that reputation now. And B, it's called Trainwreck, and the subject matter.
Well, I'll tell you something I think should have been nominated for everything, and it came out 2 or 3 years ago. It's this movie called The Skeleton Twins. Have you seen this?
No, I've heard of it.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Rent it, like, immediately. I own it. Unfortunately, it's on a DVD, so you'd have to stay here if you wanted to watch it, but you're welcome to. It stars Bill Hader and Kristen Wiig.
Okay. And Bill Hader was in Trainwreck.
Yes.
Just to tie everything together.
As twin brother and sister. So they're like us. They're roommates.
Oh, okay.
And it's definitely a comedy drama, but being that it's the two of them, leans very heavily towards, the comedy. And really is one of those movies. It is about people handling like very serious issues, but through this lens of being very funny.
Right.
It actually begins in a very somber note. Bill Hader's character attempts suicide, and when Kristen Wiig gets the phone call that lets her know that her brother's in the hospital, first of all, her ringtone is something ridiculous. I can't even remember what it is, but just the song makes you laugh. And then you discover she's got a mountain of pills in her hand as well, and was thinking about ending her own life.
I'm lying.
And then
I
is sent to
yes, I did see this based on your recommendation. I'm sorry that I completely forgot.
And it's so good, and really, it does say something. One of the things that I loved about it is that I was really moved. The end of it, basically, and so you get into the movie. They had a shitty childhood.
Yeah.
They got through it together. And then they lost touch with each other for 10 years, and now they're back in each other's lives. And the fact is, no one understands the other as well as they do.
And that's part of why they were both going down the suicide road, because it was so awful, and what they needed was to have
what they needed was each other. And what they needed, and what's interesting is that, a little spoiler in the end, is that the relationship that you expect to take precedence in Kristen Wiig's life is actually forfeited so that she can retain this relationship with her brother. And first of all, as someone with one sibling of the opposite sex, I think that brother-sister relationships rarely get a lot of play.
I agree.
A lot of things are about brothers. A lot of things are about sisters. Rarely do you see what it's like. And so that's another podcast for another time, perhaps. But, the idea that it was kind of framed up as a romantic comedy in a sense, but the romance was a sibling romance, and it was how they came together again. And it was beautifully done. And hilarious at times.
And I guess my thing about that's...
But Kristen Wiig and Bill Hader would never be nominated for Oscars because they're Saturday Night Live alums who are making one of their very first movies.
Correct. And I think that what's interesting about that is that it was not a pure comedy, and that it was not straight on, this is all funny.
Yeah.
Which is why it should have gotten at least some kind of nod, because it does have that drama aspect.
Yep.
And I think nowadays you have to. You're not going to get I think comedies are they're not going to get respect on their own anymore. I just don't think that's done anymore, because I think people have made it look too easy.
Yeah.
And so if there's no challenge, people don't think you've accomplished anything. Well,
and honestly, I think the folks with the prestige who are trying to make Oscar bait movies, somebody once said Oscar bait has become its own genre. Right?
Right, but it's always a drama. Yeah, it's always a freaking drama.
But it's a type of drama as well, and it's a certain thing that's going to appeal to the Academy. We're not making prestige comedies anymore. When's the last time we saw a comedy with this really top tier cast of good actors across the board who were making something that's comedy, very funny, pure comedy, but almost highbrow in the wealth of talent that's being used up there. I don't know that's just, when I see comedies at, and it's interesting. I've been to very few recently. I did see Trainwreck. I enjoyed it because I like Amy Schumer a lot.
Well, remember back, goes a while, Noise is Off was a play, hysterical, especially Act 2. They made it into a movie, and they had Carol Burnett and Christopher Reeve. They had, at the time, top level comedians and Christopher Reeve. Oh, please. You
Too
know,
soon?
that's just he was never my favorite actor. As a person, I thought there's where we go. He was a great person. He was not the greatest actor in my opinion, but he was beautiful, and that's what his part was.
He made you believe a man could fly.
Okay. So anyway, this was after that. But anyway, it was very, very funny, and you can't say it was a farce play.
Mm-hmm.
And so the movie was farce.
Yep.
And it was done pretty well.
Yeah.
But even had it been, the directing was probably a little issue. Michael Caine was in it, for God's sake.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it had this all-star cast, but it was a comedy. And I think even if the ending kind of killed it, in that they needed to fix the ending so it wasn't as bleh as it was. But had they fixed that, I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
You can have everybody and their dog in it. You have 15 Oscar winners in a pure comedy, farce, whatever. It's not going to get respect. And I think that's a shame, because it is harder.
Well, and are the Oscars the only place that you get respect? I mean, and do we need the Oscars? This was our first show.
No,
right?
and
Our
I'm
very
not
first
talking
episode was, what are these awards all about anyway?
Right. And no, everybody and their dog has awards. But I guess my thing is that.
But I still wonder. I agree with you that comedy doesn't get as much respect, and I wonder if chasing Oscars is not necessarily. But I think about Soap Dish, right? Sally Field.
Yeah.
Kevin Kline.
No, it had
Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, it had everybody
Whoopi
in it.
Goldberg.
Yeah. No. That was amazing,
hilarious.
but it was never going to get anything.
No, but it wasn't trying to. It had other goals in mind than winning a bunch of Oscars.
And maybe that's the thing. Comedies just don't have that goal. They have a different goal.
Yeah. And they don't care as much. Whereas,
I don't. And that's the thing is I don't go.
And about Oscars. It depends so much on the campaign
right.
and how much,
But I don't
no
go.
one was going to mount a campaign for Soap Dish.
But I don't when I do shows, as I said, I audition for plays that I usually that I wouldn't mind seeing or would like to see.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of show. And it's usually comedy, I'll be honest. And the deal about comedy, their goal is to make people feel good, to make them laugh.
Yeah, usually have happy endings.
And that's not always it's not necessarily to make people learn something, to educate them. That's not the point, to make them better people. It's to take them out of themselves for a couple of hours, whether it's a play, whether it is a comic, whether it is a movie, a TV show, and then it steps away, and then it's over. You have to go back to your real life until the next time you can see it or whatever. And I think that you're right. Maybe it's just the goals of the two are different.
Yeah.
And maybe that's okay. Maybe it's okay.
So final diagnosis: dying is easy, comedy is hard. Somebody said that. Somebody important said that.
Somebody important
totally
did say that. And I will also say, timing is everything.
Timing is absolutely everything, and comics and comedy actors deserve way more respect than they typically get. And
understand it's not hard. It's not easy.
But maybe people don't show up to comedies to admire so much as they do to escape. And so if everyone in the St. James Theater sits around admiring Kevin Kline's work the way that I do, maybe it lessens their good time, and maybe his work is for naught. Maybe it's better that they
maybe it should look effortless.
Maybe it should. To most people who don't know what it's like to do that, and maybe they should just have a wonderful evening in the theater and enjoy themselves and call it a night.
Yeah. I guess we'll call this a night.
This is POPeration.
I'm Stacey.
I'm Eric.
Subscribe.
You've been listening to POPeration with Eric and Stacey. If this POPeration was successful for you, don't forget to subscribe, stat. Check out our blog and other extras at www.thepoperationroom.com. You can also follow us on social media on Facebook and at POPeration Room on Twitter. Music for POPeration is provided by purpleplanet.com.